Hello, I'm Jane Turner from writewithjane.com. And in this session of Authors in Conversation, I'm talking to Jane Monica Jones, who's a financial therapist and the author of The Billionaire Buddha. Now, Jane, I'd love to hear what got you into this fascinating field of financial therapy.
Thank you, Jane, for having me. It's really lovely to be here. So, why did I become a financial therapist? Well, the truth is, I was really terrible at money. And I wanted to get better at that. And the first journey that I took was very much around the wealth creation kind of guru space. And in that, I just sort of felt like a couple of things. It was a little bit vacuous. It didn't have kind of a personal development component in a way. And I was also a little bit about, you know what, I don't need to make a lot of wealth. I would like to just be able to temper the pieces in me that are overspending or not being able to save or whatever. I got a lot of information, a lot of education, but it didn't really make much of a difference when I still felt incapable to be able to save and incapable to be able to earn more or whatever that was. So I was interested in the idea that there's something more than just numbers when it comes to money. And that really has taken me on a very deep personal journey in looking at what stops me from thriving, essentially, and what stops others from thriving as well. And I think we need to look at that in the context of psychological and behavioral challenges and not just about financial education. So that's being terrible at money was the thing that got me into this.
Well, what a worthy cause then to set yourself up to really be more financially savvy and therefore more secure, I guess. That's certainly a word that resonates with me around the money space.
Yeah, totally. And look, the thing is that, I'm a big believer that money is not the numbers. It's all the projections we put back over issues of, status or issues of empowerment or issues of confidence. That we project onto it. And when we start working at what are the barriers to my own self-confidence and what are the barriers to my own feelings of empowerment, then we're really looking at deeper work. And then we feel a bit more capable and able to kind of take life on in a way that maybe we've never done before. So it's a really beautiful lens when we look at money in this way, beyond comparison and striving for status and things like that. When we look at the lens of issues of self-worth and am I able to be at the table in a way and feel worthy to be there regardless of what's sitting in my bank account, is a really great piece of personal work that I think people can do.
Wow, yes. And what kind of people tend to come to you?
Yeah, it's broad. It's people that have a lot and people that have a little. Again, what I see from working in this space for long enough, that the money is a great equalizer, because it doesn't matter whether you have a lot or you have a little, the way it affects our mental health is the same. So it makes us feel afraid, it makes us feel vulnerable. And it doesn't matter what you have in your bank account, it makes us feel that same sort of, if I make this decision, am I going to survive? So it really pairs back down into our issues of survival. So on that spectrum, I have people that have a lot and people that have a little. And some of the kind of common challenges are, say, for those that don't have very much, is what's stopping me from earning more or stopping me from managing the money that I have, so that maybe I'm overspending or buying as a form of self-soothing or pain relief, or that I feel unworthy to ask for more. Often when we're traumatized around money, we can't ask for more. The voice disappears. We also then, on the other scale, I have people that are retiring that may have been a school teacher all their life and then are a little bit, there's too much space and time in their life, and they go, you know what, I'm going to start managing my superannuation, even though I have no skill in that, and start gambling with these large quantities of money. Or people that, because of certain traumas, really reject money, so that it could be that, they lost their parents quite young, and even though they inherited a lot, they lost their parents, and so that they can't go anywhere near the money because it's too painful. Or that they may have got a windfall in some way. And that could have been traumatic as well, if they were a victim of crime or they had a severe accident, and then they get a windfall of money. And again, that becomes that sort of, I don't want to deal with it. It's too painful. It's too excruciating. So yeah, it varies, very much varies in life stages, gender, socioeconomic. I have a lot of people that come and work with me that what I would, is termed social trauma, that they left regimes where you weren't allowed to get up and ahead above others, or that they lived in famine and now have settled into Australia and are still slightly in their head going, I'm still living under this state of famine, So it's very complex and quite interesting.
I'll say, and I had no idea at all that financially well-off people were also not comfortable in that space necessarily. Isn't that an interesting thing that we don't, we don't know what we don't know?
Yeah. Look, I kind of put it under a category of debilitating wealth. Somehow it can be debilitating,
Yeah.
And see, that's the thing. There's not a lot of psychological safety around money. And I really seek to change that. That, if you're not wealthy, then you're not successful. Well, some of the definitions that I like to talk about success is that how someone feels safe in my presence. Isn't that a far and deeper and lovelier definition of success than something that's attained around material wealth? So we need to imbue a lot more psychological safety around money. That yes, people that do have a lot doesn't mean they're not struggling. And just because people have less doesn't mean that they're not thriving as well. So we need to have, as a community, in our family, in our friendship groups, that we need to create a lot more psychological safety so that when we are challenged, we feel it's okay and safe to seek support.
Yeah, that is quite a different perspective.
The thing is that money makes us feel so vulnerable. So that's why there's been that thing. It's like, yeah, you can't be vulnerable. And particularly when we've been in cultures where vulnerability is just a no-go zone, and money is going to make us feel very, very vulnerable.
Isn't that the truth? And look, I'm curious too, Jane, where along your journey did the idea of writing a book come up?
Yeah, it was really interesting. It was starting in that process that I've been one of those curious characters. I've always been interested in personal development in some level. And after doing the journey of doing the wealth creation and then kind of going maybe a bit more spiritualized and say, well, I want to, not be attached to money. I kind of thought, there's something in the middle ground. And I really like this idea of this sort of billionaire Buddha, that we can be wealthy and have wealth, but have it less attached way of looking at it, that it's not so much propping up my identity or propping up my wounding or propping up places that I feel I'm sort of as a coping mechanism. So I really wanted to look at the deeper aspects of our relationship with money in a way that was probably not really explored before. Not just that, yes, make as much money as possible and you'll be happy, or actually deride money and say that actually we shouldn't want it. But then that doesn't pay the rent. So I wanted to look at the middle ground in a way of how do we become that billionaire Buddha, that we can have a level of being able to look after ourselves and then not use it as a prop for places where we may feel less capable, or use it as a kind of a prop in a way when we actually feel maybe underneath, a little bit more deflated or some way. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And we started talking about this before I pressed the record button, and then I stopped because, as I said, I'd like to actually capture this conversation that we have on this recording.
Yeah.
And it's about the fact that I saw you speaking at an event, gosh, would it have been about September last year? It was a little ways back, wasn't it? And, after you gave us a little bit of a general overview of what it is that you do, you called for a volunteer to come up and let you demonstrate the kind of work that you do. And I put my name on one of those little slips of paper, and I think probably most of the room did. And, as you pulled out the name, my heart dropped and I thought, oh, I really could have done with this. This would have really helped. Nevertheless, I happened to be sitting at the end of the table where you were, going through what you do with the person who was lucky enough to be the one whose name was pulled out. And what you don't know, because we haven't had a conversation since then, is that I had a profound experience in the energy that you created with that person that you were just asking simple questions to. And, she was doing what she was doing in response to those questions. And so was I. In that energy that you had created. So, I've tended to be a very left-brained person. I worked for the public service my whole working life up to the age of 52 when I was made redundant. And, since then, in fact, a little while before then, I did start opening up a little bit more to the fact that, the thinking mind can't solve everything. If I was to try and explain through my thinking mind what happened to me then, it would be almost impossible to do. But you'll remember the way this played out after you finished working with that particular lady. You said to us, now turn to the person next to you and answer the question that was asked. And I was with a really great friend. And so she said, oh, do you want to go first? And I said, no, I absolutely don't want to go first. You go first. And so she said her bit. And then she said, what's going on? She knows me very, very well. And she knows that I was in a sort of a state of semi, whatever it was. I was busily processing something, is what I now know what was going on. But she said, what's going on? And I said, oh, this brought up a lot for me. And really, it's about that great yawning hole that we have inside of ourselves that we're trying to fill. And for me, that great yawning hole that was actually, I got some access to when you were working with that lady, I got some access to that. And there was an image that I didn't recognize, but the feeling was loneliness. And I didn't get it. I didn't know what that meant because, of course, identifying the feeling is one thing, but especially when you are that overthinker, then, well, what does that mean? That's my next question. Well, strangely enough, I had a coffee with that friend yesterday. And she was asking me some questions that were really challenging. And, I was comfortable in that space. She knew she had permission, because that's important. Otherwise, we just got to close up, But I didn't close up because I didn't need to close up. But again, it was that yearning. And then for no particular reason, I picked up a little photo album, and started sort of scrolling through it. And here's what came up. And I'm just going to share the screen now. Now, just to let you know, I re-recorded this section because it was just a little bit confusing, I think, and I wanted to make clear the main points. Also, the image itself was quite small, so I've blown it up a little bit here for you as well, or for me, probably, to be honest. So the background to this image is that I was the youngest in a family of 5 children, and my oldest sister was 15 years older than me. Then there were 2 brothers who came in quick succession. So my parents had 3 kids under the age of 3. And then my sister Debbie came along 6 years later, and I came along 6 years after Debbie. So what was going on in this image that you're looking at now is that I was sitting there waiting for the other kids to come home from school. And in the case of my older sister, she was already out at work, so she came home later anyway. But it was the 3 who were at school that I was just waiting for. And I honestly don't know how long I was sitting there on that rock by myself, but I feel like it was a very long time. And I'm pretty sure I did it every day, now that I'm reflecting back on a memory that I didn't consciously have when I was sitting at the event listening to Jane, where this part of the pain that I was holding started to get ready to emerge. And the really strange thing about this is that this image was sitting in a photo album at the top of my wardrobe for years and years and years. And the fact that I chose to reach up and pull the photo album down on the day that I was going to be talking to Jane about her book and financial therapy and what she does just made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And the thing that this evocative image brought up for me was that sense of aloneness. It was the very sense that I experienced when I was sitting at the table listening to Jane. And it's obviously that sense that's been there for a very, very long time. Because in fact, what I found out at the age of 45 when I was doing my NLP training is that I was the surviving twin in a case of vanishing twin syndrome. And boy, did that piece of the puzzle and the fact that I was essentially traumatized in the womb put into perspective the ability that I developed before I was even born to shut off my emotions. And there were some really toxic patterns that I used to keep my emotions away. And why I'm such a fan of what Jane does is that she opened the door to me exploring what was behind that very deep sense of being alone. So what I'm going to do now is go back to what Jane had to say about this part of my story.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's that existential piece, isn't it? We're talking about the existential part of us that is deeply wants connection. I mean, I'm just completely delighted that you've shared this, because I think it really poignantly illustrates where we often go around money. And that is that if I have this bauble, then I can have social connection. And we long for that. We are very much part of the mammalian, animal, and we need social connection. And our whole system, our whole nervous system is very much like that. We have the limbic system, which is part of the mammalian thing, that we do better in herds. And to be alone is like death. And essentially it is, in a way, because that's in the early stages, that if we are left alone, we don't thrive. So what we often use money for is the tool as a way to get social connection. That if I have the right career, that if I have the right house, that if I have something that I can share with others, then I won't be so existentially alone. And this is where we often go around money, rather than feeling that, can I be with alone? Because to be with alone, we were often alone, even being alone. So we don't want to go there, It reminds me of when this nervous system was not developed and incapable to be with those heavy experiences when we were a child. So what happens is that when we had emotions as a child, it was so overwhelming. And we have an echo and memory of that overwhelm. So you know what? I don't want to feel it. It's too painful, because I was alone in feeling those experiences, whether it was anger, loneliness, frustration, sadness, grief, whatever it is. Now, in an undeveloped nervous system as a child, it's too much. And we have an echo of that. But what happens is, as an adult, we've been so programmed not to feel it. So we just go into our head, we just go, that's it. I'll try and figure out life from here. But what happens, as you rightly said, is that when we don't have that sadness, we can't have access to great joy. If we don't have anger, we also don't have compassion and boundaries and strength, in a way, So when we shut down our emotional life, we shut down the richness of life. And then we start seeking it in the outer. Oh, if I just have the right car, if I can have a house that's perfectly ordered, I'll feel safe. And this is what we seek in money, that if I can have the right shoes, then I will be confident enough to be able to continue and pay my mortgage in the long term, whatever it is, So it's a deeply, deeply profound lens that we can look at who we are, because it's not about money, it's about survival.
Gosh.
And it is all about survival. It's not, am I going to survive if I leave this job? Am I going to survive if I stay in this job? Am I going to survive if I take on this mortgage and it might feel really restrictive? Or am I going to survive if I have more freedom and not be so restricted? So everything becomes part of this lens. But of course, we sit with that inner peace that cannot be filled with the outer experience, and that is that deeper existential longing. As a child, it was too painful to feel the longing. But as an adult, it can be part of our guidance system. What do I long for? I long for connection. I long to feel safe. I long to feel secure. And how am I using money as an instrument to either not feel that or try and satisfy that?
Yes.
So that this is the territory. And if we choose to take it on, it's very exciting for us. That you can get to a stage where it doesn't matter what's happening in my financial life. I have myself now in a way that I never had before, or I've got my back now in a way that I've never had before. And this is the gift of looking at our issues with money in a way that actually the fear of it becomes so diminished that we actually can start seeing ourselves, look how I've been driven in this way and how much it's driven me and I didn't even know myself. So yeah, thank you so much, Jane. That's just beautiful.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Jane. And now, is the Billionaire Buddha, that's still available on places like Amazon and what have you?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can just download it, or you can order it through me, but whatever. Yes, it's very much available.
And where can people contact you, Jane? Because I think there's going to be a little bit of a groundswell once this gets out there.
Yeah, so janemonicajones.com is an easy way if you wanted to come and work with me. But I also have a company, an organization called the Financial Wellbeing Company. And what we do there is we actually offer on-demand content so that, if you can't afford to maybe see me, if money is a bit of an issue, I have programs where you can get financial wellbeing content on demand. Again, you can just go to Jane Monica Jones and find that out, and there's links to my site about my online learning management system, as well as we work with organizations and employees. So, rather than doing mindfulness or having mindfulnesses, but also having financial wellbeing programs. So you can actually get our organization to work with your organization as an employee benefit. You could have financial wellbeing on demand, but we can also build bespoke programs for you. It's about giving accessibility to financial wellbeing products at any price point. So we make it really accessible. We want to get as many people as possible access to deeper, not just the financial education and literacy, but also the financial psychology and behavior change. And that's what we lead in this space.
Fantastic. Oh, it is so good to have met you, to have had this conversation with you. And, I'm on my journey. I may well be knocking on your door sometime soon.
Great. Thanks, Jane. Thanks for having me.